Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for this session to look over our UEL MBA programs, and in particular, this intake that we have coming up in September. I'm pleased to say that I've got some fantastic guests alongside me. I've got Steve Gutierrez, who's the enrollment manager out in the US, Juan Carlos Rabena, who's the head of our academic faculty, and we're also joined by an alumni of the MBA programs, Matt Bennett. Thanks for joining us today, Matt.
Good to see you.
So we can get started by kind of talking about, for any of those that maybe didn't join our recent webinar, very quickly, kind of the partnership between the Ducere platform and the University of East London. We'll do a little recap of some of the modules and how it's set up. And then, of course, we can just go into hearing from Matt and his experience of studying across our MBA programs. And we've always got time at the end for any questions. If you head over to the bottom of your window, you'll see a little Q&A box. Feel free to send in questions whilst we're talking. We'll come to that section towards the end, and you can direct those questions either towards myself, Juan Carlos, Steve, or Matt, and we can hopefully get you all the information that you're after today. So we've done the introductions. Let's go into a little bit about the partnership of itself and how all of this works. So Ducere partners with universities around the world to deliver undergraduate and postgraduate qualifications. There are three sort of core principles to the Ducere platform. It's that the qualifications are 100% online. So it provides a lot of flexibility. The vast majority of our students will be working full time whilst they're studying as well. There are no exams. It's all coursework based, and we've built these programs around the principles of applied learning. So any of the coursework that you will complete, you'll have the added benefit of actually being able to focus on the industry that you're working in throughout your time of study with us. So it's a much more practical approach through here. Now, coming this September, we will have two options for our MBA programs. We have the Executive MBA plus the Artificial Intelligence MBA program. What we'll just run through very quickly first is the modules that are included within the Executive MBA. Both of these options, I should add, are available as both 12-month programs or 2-year part-time options. Please have a word with your enrollment advisor to find out whether or not, full-time or part-time can work with your schedule, and we can offer the best advice based on what your current commitments are. And then in terms of the layout of the course across your time of study, you've got 5 modules plus a group project. Now, for the Executive MBA, we have business strategy, leadership in practice, digital transformation, marketing and communications, and then finance for managers. If we switch over to the artificial intelligence layout, what you'll see is that we've taken out the finance course, the finance module. As well as marketing and communications. And then we have 2 specialized modules on artificial intelligence that will look at ethics and governance, and then business strategies and return on investment. But the principles remain the same. Always remember that, whether you're looking at the executive or the AI options around the applied learning approach, where it's all coursework based and it's going to be incredibly practical and flexible to fit in around your current commitments. Now, I did want to make sure that we've got plenty of time to delve into the actual student experience today. I should add that for anybody that wants to learn more about what we're offering, going more into the kind of academic side of things, we had a recent webinar session. It's all available through our YouTube channel. And through there, what you'll also be able to find is testimonials from many more of our students captured on graduation day. So it's a great place to be able to explore what the course is all about, more of the details, and of course, any questions that you have, you can come back to your enrollment advisors and we'll be happy to assist. But Matt, really wanted to take today's session to be able to have a good chat about your experience within the MBA programs that we offer. So thank you so much for joining us today. I wonder if you could kind of very briefly talk about maybe what brought you to looking to do an MBA, and then your experience as a whole through studying on this partnership program with Ducere Business School and the University of East London.
Hi, yeah, I'm not very good at briefly, so I'll do my best. So I ran the family business. It was a very distressed business, and unfortunately had to liquidate it. So I was left with sort of 10 years of awful lot of experience, but no bits of paper. So in the modern world, you need qualifications. So I hadn't been to any form of education really since GCSEs, and I'm 47. So someone else can do the maths, but it's about 32 years. So I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do. I looked at a range of options. MBA seemed the best way to go, but I didn't know if I could get on an MBA course with not having a degree. Bumped into you guys. And I suppose, look, the most important thing that the other 20 odd of you will want to know is it worth it? And in a word, yeah. It's not easy. It's incredibly hard, and I'm sure a lot of you have not done any academics. I say this with all authority. I'm probably the least academic person who has ever enrolled on one of these courses. I found everything incredibly difficult that most people found easy, and I passed with a distinction, which for me is a huge achievement. And I did it by horsepower. So where a lot of people are a lot quicker, a lot smarter, a lot more efficient, I basically just put more work in. And if you're wondering whether you can fit it around work, life, everything else, the answer is yes. But like everything, it requires sacrifice. So you just have to prioritize it. And you will see people drop out. It does happen. But I think what you've got to remind yourself when you do these courses is it's similar to an ultra marathon or an expedition or anything. It's about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. So you just have to accept that it's out of your comfort zone and it's difficult. And that is harder for people at our age because the likelihood is you've been top dog wherever you are. You're the person that everybody goes to ask advice. And I actually think one of the most valuable things I got from this experience is a reminder of what it's like to be the dumbass. And that's really, really valuable at exact level because it reminds you, for a bit of empathy, when you're busy, million things on, one of your direct reports comes to you and says, I don't understand this. To have that empathy again, where you don't understand things, where you're not the smartest in the room all the time, and you do have to remind yourself what it is to learn and how to process things. And that is a big part of it for me. I think if I was going to give people advice, the most important thing when you enroll and you get started is find yourself a team. That's really, really important is group together with a couple of people, get involved in the WhatsApp and lean on each other because it can be a lonely old place when you're behind a screen all the time. And, you get in your own head when you find things difficult. And I was very lucky to be invited into a really great little team. And we would spend hours every Monday night going through the coursework. And you make friends doing that as well as great connections. The industry project at the end is phenomenal because rather than writing just a basic thesis, you actually get to work with a real business and you get to put everything into practice in a way that perhaps you don't do in normal life. I found it really, really helpful for me to use frameworks and structure around things, a lot of which I already knew. I thought I could read a balance sheet. I'd had 10 years of practice, but actually, when you meet Chinmay, you realize how little you know and how amazing he is at imparting that knowledge. And I think for me, just to kind of wrap up, it's like any really tough experience, right? You have to commit to it 100%, and it's too easy to prioritize other things. But I would go to every lecture, I would go to all the support groups, and I would commit to it, because once you get through this, you come out the other end. The knowledge you have is I mean, it's second to none. You know, you've got this real world experience that's then coupled to framework structures and a way of approaching everything in a systematic way. It's fantastic. I can't recommend it highly enough. And no, Chris didn't pay me. And I did ask for it, but no, he didn't pay me to say all
Thanks for clarifying, Matt.
that.
But look, I mean, to be honest as well, in terms of how quickly this experience can go as well,
Yeah.
um, I'm shocked that you're here today, graduating in September, because it felt like 3 or 4 months ago that we initially spoke when you made that inquiry. Honestly, it does not feel like that much time has passed. And I know for a lot of our students, it is that commitment and being dedicated for that time. Um, but certainly, if you're choosing the 12-month full-time option, it flies by. And I think, you know, you put it very well, actually, there, Matt. But look, this is a master's degree at the end of the day, and that doesn't come easy. It requires the dedication and commitment to the program. Um, but also, we will have many students who are joining us where it's their first experience of higher education. Um, and I think we've delivered one of the most accessible MBA programs out there for that type of individual. Um, I mean, you'll know firsthand, sort of in terms of how we've structured the assignments, how you can apply that to your industry. Um, how do you feel that sort of, you know, made it easier to connect with what we were asking you to write about than maybe the more traditional format of here's a famous case study. It's not related to your industry, but it's a really good example of the theories and methodologies we're discussing.
Well, I think there's two huge benefits. If you're self-employed, or you're like me, where you sort of had like a a rough time of it where you've lost the business, this is hugely valuable, because it was really cathartic for me to be able to academically investigate what went wrong, how it went wrong, why it went wrong, and what I would do differently. And being self-employed, that's incredibly powerful, because you then come out of it with all of that knowledge and that structure, so that you don't make the same mistakes again. You can sell that. The benefit of you, if you're working in a larger corporation, is that by using your own business to do this, your business is getting a payback, but so are you, because you're then learning in the business you work in how to make that business better, and you are the go-to for that, which can only help your career. Um, it's not the smoothest ride at the start, right? It's bumpy. I had no idea what referencing meant, what any of that was. I couldn't understand why can't I use Wikipedia? Why can't I just Google it? What is this, right? All of that, right? And I could give you endless advice around what to do and how to do that. But I think that's part of the experience for me. Have that expectation management that your first assignment is going to be a struggle, because it's all completely new. But it's like everything, right? That's part of the process. Once you start, you don't know anything. By the end, you're an expert. If I would give people advice on what to do in terms of how to get in front of that, probably buy and I'm not at home, so I don't have it to hand. There's a book called Cite Them Right. So buy yourself a good book that tells you what referencing is, and get to grips with understanding that, because that's a real blocker. If you've not been in education for a long, long time, that's really the only thing that's completely alien. Other than that, everything really is language you'll have used, and you'll be used to being immersed in day to day. It's just about applying that academic rigor to things, and making sure that if you say a thing, you back it up with a claim. The lecturers are really, really good. They bring you along. The most important thing, though, is not the lecturers, it's the team that you're with. Is that if you lean on each other and you support each other and you work as a team, it's much, much better, because everybody else will have those same anxieties and those struggles as you. So you learn to pull together, and then somebody's discovered something that works, and you pass that knowledge around. And that, it's an important part of the dynamic for me.
And I think as well, many people that are coming into doing an online course, maybe the perception is that it's isolated, self-motivated study. Um, but there is a community, as part of this. What we try and deliver is anything that you would expect to have on campus, we have in digital platforms instead. So you'll have the sessions with your academics. These are live sessions, live
Yep.
weekly sessions, which, by the way, we record as well. So anybody that's watching that's thinking, well, hang on a sec, I've got two British guys that are talking about this, London University, but I'm based out in, I think somebody's just mentioned in the chat that they're based in Texas. What's that going to do for me? Well, we schedule things. Firstly, we look at where everybody's based, and we look at how we can sort of best place those live sessions. But all of the live materials will get recorded as well. Did you find that throughout your time of study, was it a mixture? Could you
Yeah, oh
join
yeah,
all of the
God, yeah.
live sessions? How did you approach that?
I did everything live regardless of the time. Because I just felt that if I was going to get through this, the best way to do it is to do as much as possible.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, in my cohort, God, we had everything. I think we had I mean, there was loads of Americans, loads of Australians. I mean, even in the British one, the little team I was in, one guy was from Australia, who's moved here. The woman was one of the women was Italian, moved here, and an American that moved here. So even the so-called Brits, I was there was only two of us that were actually born in Britain. So it is a truly international course, and I think that's really interesting because I don't have experience of an international PLC or anything like that. So not coming from a multinational company, I think what was really good was having that experience in the groups as well when you got together. Is that there are massive differences between just the language of Britain and America, believe it or not, and that was part of the experience for me. You build an international network, which is really really valuable. One of the guys actually flew up to come and see me for the day, so that you do end up with real relationships with people. And I think I was surprised. I'd never spent a lot of time behind a screen. I worked all through COVID, so it was all completely new for me, and it's very fluid. It's much more natural than you'd expect. And with having the recordings as well, that's really really useful because there's a lot of content. It can move quickly, and if you do move at a different pace, you've not missed anything because you can just watch it back on the recording and pick back up.
Yeah, and in terms of kind of like, that's great that you were able to physically meet up with a fellow student. We hear about that all the time, throughout, whether it's, within study sessions that are organized, people meeting up. Even though people are online students, and I don't know how many people that are watching, live today, this will be useful for, but you are still able to use the university facilities. For any of our UK-based students, do bear that in mind that it is possible. But we've heard stories of students who are, even if they're in the States, realize that actually they're not too far away from each other and can have physical meetups. These type of things are possible. It's down to you, as to as a student, as to how much or little you kind of want to take from that opportunity. But I think it's great to kind of know that the relationships that you're kind of forming within these cohorts, it's not just for your time of study. It goes well beyond. So when you talk about that global network that you've now, this expanded group of individuals, there's so much that can come out of that. We've seen contracts being won between students, startup businesses that come out of cohorts. And it might be that as you join the course, that's not in your mind at all. But who knows what's going to happen over the next couple of years and what that can lead to.
Yeah.
And the best way to have it develop is through those professional networks.
I mean, there's a guy, Jack, who I'm still very much in touch with. He refers to me as his motorway wife because whenever he's stuck on the motorway on a long commute he still rings me now, and you go through it over. You think what you go through in a year, and it's so intense that you kind of put together, and because you don't necessarily pick the people you're together with, you're from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, all different levels of expertise, and you really go through it with each other. Everything from relationships forming, breaking up, kids being born, all sorts, and you go through that over a year really intensely, and that's a big part of the process for me. I think I've made some lifelong friends with this, which I hadn't anticipated. I do want to nail down 2 points though, because there'll be people on this call that are thinking, they're nervous about the academic side and they're nervous about the time commitment. And the academic thing, I'll kill that quickly. I cannot stress enough how unacademic I am. And it is easily achievable if you're prepared to put the hours in. This is not, it's not easy because it's a master's, right? They don't hand them out to anybody, but you can achieve great results and you don't need to be academic to do that. You just need to build each assignment brick by brick by brick. And the way the assignment's done, the first one you read will blow your mind, completely intimidate you. You won't be able to even fathom it. But do you know what? You'll do it the same way you did everything in life. You'll start at the beginning, and by the end of it, you're an expert. And you just break that assignment down piece by piece by piece. And then by about the second or third assignment, you'll have your technique, you'll have your way of doing that, and it'll all start to flow. You just have to get through those first couple. Once you're over that, you're away and running. The time commitment is the other one. It will feel impossible. You will be looking at this thinking, how can I do that? How can I break that down? Eat the elephant in pieces. If you actually look at the time that you spend in the evenings and how you spend that time, you're going to lose some weight and your liver's going to thank you, because you won't be spending it down the bar anymore or the pub or whatever. You're going to be wedded to your laptop. And if you actually look at how much time you spend, I won't say waste, how much time you spend doing other things, you basically just got to tweak it a bit. And if you're like me and you've got young kids, honestly, this is the greatest excuse not to do any parenting. So, there's some upsides as well.
Yeah, I'm fully aware of how much time they can take. Well, look, I think as we talk about kind of that approach to taking on, the academic side of things, I think it'd be great if I can pass over to Juan Carlos here, just to provide a little bit of insight as to, you would have come across many students where this is their first experience of higher education. Is there any sort of advice that you can provide? I mean, Matt's given some, fantastic feedback on this
Yeah,
already,
I
but
don't know what
anything
more
you'd
you
like
want to
to add to it?
I think Matt's done a good job of covering most of the bases. I think that one thing to really keep in mind from the perspective when you're on the outside looking in, right, to something that you haven't started yet, is that as you mentioned, Chris, the we're not a case study program, right? I mean, obviously, your academics are going to discuss experiences in the past, and a lot of them are from their own experience because they're practical academics as well. They're out in the field putting these things into practice. So there'll be examples used, of course. That's how human beings learn. But the assignments themselves are practically focused on your work, and as a result, there are academic components to it, sure. And like Matt said, you have to learn how to do some of that stuff, and your teachers will walk you through that process. But you are in an advantage that you have the opportunity to work on your organization that you're in right now. And as a result, you're really kind of already starting at halfway, if that makes sense, right? So if you're marketing communications and the last assignment is, for all intents and purposes, to create a marketing plan, this is based on your organization. If you choose to go down that route, you already know the people in your organization. You know what's going to be realistic, you know what's not. And you've probably already worked on something like this in your firm. Maybe you haven't actually sat down and done CMO type work, but you've been in meetings where these things have been discussed. You've been a part of this process, etc. So you're not starting from zero. I think that's the big thing. The stuff like referencing and putting things in the right format and stuff, that's minor bananas. I know students tend to focus on it because it's so different, from what you're doing normally, right? But even if you look at the rubrics, it's a small part of your grade. It's not that big of a deal. You get over it quickly. It's about what you're doing the core of your work on, and the core of your work will be, if you choose to go down that path, on the organization you're already affiliated with. So you're really just extending the work you're already doing. And I really think that's a big advantage because, you know, yeah, there's a lot of value to learn in the debacle that was the new Coke experience in the 1980s. Or heck, even last week, ChatGPT 5 launched and people got very upset that 4.0 disappeared from 1 minute to the next. So these lessons keep being relearned. And there's not like there's nothing to learn there. But if you've never used ChatGPT before in your life, if you're the one person who hasn't, or if you've never had Coca-Cola in your life, probably a slightly larger base of that, but not that much larger to be fair, then you might feel like, well, I don't know anything about this company. I don't know anything about this situation. You're always going to know something about your company, right? You're always going to know something about what you do on a daily basis. So you're not starting from zero. That's the most important thing. The academic parts are important. I'm not saying they're not. But the core of the learning you're doing here is meant to be enhancing the skills that you're already working through and to give you a leg up in other areas that you might not feel super comfortable with within the space you're already in. So to grow in place if you choose to follow that route. You don't have to follow that route. You can try to start from scratch, be the entrepreneurial route. I've done that before, a lot of fun. But you don't have to, right? You have different paths, and I don't think you're going to get that in most other MBA programs. You're gonna go into a classroom and have to relearn a lot of academics very quickly. And if you don't, then you won't have a chance to succeed. You're going to have to relearn some of the academics here too, but you'll still have plenty of a chance to succeed and you'll grow into the academic part as you go through your classes.
Perfect. Thanks, JC, for that. We've got some questions coming in already through here. I think it's a great time to sort of open this up. Anybody that's watching that's got questions either for Matt, for Juan Carlos, if we've got any students that are based in the US and have some sort of specific questions that Steve will be able to assist with as well, please do pop them into either the chat or the Q&A session, and we can get that covered off on here. We've got a question from Paul, which is asking about any suggestions. Matt, you mentioned a book that might be good to purchase prior to the start of the course. Were you aware of sort of any other materials that people there? I'd like to stress that we have built the platform to include all of the materials required for the master's degree, but I didn't know if there was sort of any additional advice that you kind of wanted to put out there as well.
I think everybody learns differently, and I think it's impossible for any platform, no matter how good, to cover off everybody because they're all unique. Personally, and it's a shame I'm always away for the summer. I've not. If I could have flipped the laptop around and showed you my my bookshelf, it's now covered in books that have just completely held together with bits of sticky pads all over, where I've put sticky bits in with notes because that's how I work. I'm sort of a bit chaotic and a bit visual with things like that. So I like to physically buy the books. I think everybody will have different learning needs, and there'll be some subjects where you're just leagues ahead of everybody, and there'll be some where you're struggling. And I think you need to find your own best practice. But the one thing with it being an executive that people tend to struggle with is the referencing. And I found Cite Them Right. I forget the author. Sorry, I should have been prepared for that. The book's called Cite Them Right. Insert your own book on referencing. I'm assuming it's Harvard referencing on all of these courses, and that's the one you've got to learn. So don't be put off it. Right, the first assignment I turned in, the referencing could not have been more wrong. I literally put hyperlinks in the middle of the text. You could not have got it more wrong. I still scored a 58. So yeah, don't let that be the be all and end all. It's 10, it's 10% or something at the end of it. So it's not the end of the world. In terms of how
I
to
just want to
think,
note real quick, Matt, for our American audience, 58 is a much better score in the UK system than it is in the American system. So just forget the numbers. You're looking
yeah.
focus on letter grades.
So I think it's a C. I don't know. Yeah, we'll call it a B. We'll round up.
Yeah.
And I still finished at the end with a distinction, and so the starts was going to be tricky in terms of any specific reading. I would wait until you start, other than the referencing thing. And then once you get into the subject, there's bits that you'll pick up on you're more interested in. But to be fair to Ducere, everything is provided. You could buy nothing and get through it on Perligo, no problem.
Awesome. And we do have some more questions coming in from here. One specifically for you, Matt, asking about kind of time commitments on here. I did mention that we've got two different delivery options. We've got full-time across 1 year, part-time across 2 years. You studied on the full-time version of the course. Across the year, are you able to sort of say like an average number of hours per week that you were there, or is it more peaks and troughs?
I can tell you what I did, but what I did was very different to what a lot of people did. I was probably up the upper end, so I was probably putting in a good 40 hours a week. But there were people on the course that were putting in 5 and 10. They were just quicker and smarter, and it's like everything. It really depends on what you want to get out of it. I actually really enjoyed the learning process. I hadn't done any education since I was basically a teenager, and I've got a very different mindset as an adult, and I really enjoyed it. And I found that I became pretty obsessive over it. Really, instead of just watching telly or anything at night, I would just lock myself away in the office and plow through the content because it is just so interesting. I think if you've got a supportive employer, that's really helpful. And I think my advice to you would be get your employer bought in, and just explain to them the value that you'll be creating. So if you look at those high level topics and the detail that you'll be drilling into, basically the way the assignments work, you'll do a reflective and then you'll do an academic analysis. So the reflective will be like tell a story about a thing you did, a thing that happened, a thing what you learned, how it felt, all of that. And then you do an academic analysis. So if your employer is a little bit cagey about how much time they're going to give you, my advice is sell them on it, show them that format and say, look, I'm prepared to work with you. You tell me what you want me to improve for the business, because you will come out of this at the end of it with a real working business plan for the company in which you work or what you want to do going forward. So these are not my numbers, but our industry project that we did, our academic told us that report would have cost to purchase around 120,000 Aussie dollars. So that's potentially what that report's worth. And you will have that at the end. It will be done for a different company, but it's still transferable. This is the strategy guide that's the most widely recognized on the planet for how to run a business, and you can do that on your business. So if your company can't see that that's tangible, and you'll be able to fit the hours in. Someone's put a comment, and I see at the side about Netflix. Yeah, you basically, there's no Netflix and there's no chill. There is now MBA, and it's not for me to say whether I would do it over the 1 year or the 2 year based on people's commitments, but from a personal perspective, I think this is one of those things where if you can possibly spare the time, get it done in a year and compress it, because the speed that year goes at, I know it's a cliche, but honestly, I cannot tell you, it will rattle by, and very quickly you'll be looking at, it's graduation time and you get to dress like Harry Potter.
And we can't wait to see you dressed as Harry Potter next month.
Super psyched. Book the hotel, all done.
Well, look, whilst we're kind of talking about that, it is a really exciting part of the journey, that celebration as well. We get a lot of our international students coming onto campus and celebrating that, bringing their families with them. And look, it's just an absolutely wonderful experience. And I think it really then kind of hammers it home to a lot of those students that, not only have they accomplished such an amazing thing to then, be in possession of a master's degree, but it is then that realization of the community, the university community that they're part of. And I think our students are incredibly fortunate that you've actually got two alumni networks. You've got the University of East London, who's providing your certificate. That's where you're going to collect your your certificate for your degree. But you're studying across the Ducere platform, and there's universities around the world that are using the Ducere platform for both their bachelor programs and their master's courses. So there's so much that you can be a part of beyond just your time of study here. And for all of our students that are going to be joining us in September, we can't wait for you to obviously come and meet up in person, and so that we can kind of celebrate the achievements together with that. We've got a few more questions coming in through here. One of our students that is based in Texas, as they say, they're working a full-time job. What type of live session schedules might they expect? So Juan Carlos, over kind of the time of study, the different 5 core modules that the students will study. Can you give a little bit of insight in terms of what those live sessions look like, how they're structured, maybe typical times of what we've seen in the past? I know it can change dependent on the makeup of the cohort, but just to offer a little bit of guidance at this point.
Sure. So the live sessions, because we have a global student base, will depend on the makeup of the class. Usually, if classes have a significant amount of their student base in North America and in Europe, then you can expect live sessions to be geared towards the European afternoon / early evening and the East Coast of North America's middle of the day, and then Pacific Coast obviously would be closer to the early morning. That'll change. Some classes have more heavy North American contingent, so the sessions will be a little bit later. Some classes have more European, Asian contingent, and African as well, and those classes will be a little earlier. But the important thing is they'll always be recorded. And these sessions, we don't take attendance. You're all adults. You get to choose whether or not you go to the live session. It's recommended. And it's your opportunity to interact with the academic directly in a live capacity, but it's not required. And they're always recorded and posted, usually 2-3 hours after the live session is what we aim for. The the live sessions are a mixture. So you have sometimes the academic will walk you through everything that's expected of you for each individual assignment and how that links back to what you're learning in the class, especially considering that the assignments are meant to be practically focused. This is a pretty big benefit because it'll walk you through, okay, you've chosen this company, this is what you need to make sure to think about. Especially, for example, in the digital transformation module, I always have to remind my students that they actually have to think about whether people will like their plan. This is something that consultants get paid a lot of money to point out to people because apparently they can't think about it on their own. But we digress. So there's those. There's good old-fashioned tutorials. Those are kind of like live lectures, right? And then there's some sessions that are purely Q&A. So that basically, so in the States, we call this office hours. In the rest of the world, it has various names, drop-ins, Q&As, blah, 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 etc. But basically, the academic just sits there and takes your questions for an hour. And these often can be the most lively sessions, right? Because students come with whatever question they have about the material, about whatever. So you'll see a mixture throughout the class. Again, all of them will be recorded. They'll be posted shortly after the sessions are over. The time frame will be geared towards the majority audience. However, every single academic gives the opportunity for students to offer feedback, right? And if the majority of the students are based in North America, but the majority of the students who will be attending the sessions are based in Africa, then they will change their schedule based on that to reflect the students who are actually going to show up. So if the North American students have clearly made it seem that they're going to only listen to the recording, we're going to gear the schedule towards the ones that want to do the live session, right? So it'll depend. And there's always an open communication with every academic. Gives you the opportunity to discuss these things. If you want to jump in live and this is a schedule that works for you, best thing to do is to make that known, right? And see like, here you go. This is what my schedule is. What's the worst that can happen? The academic says, sorry, I have 30 other students who want to do a different time. Chances are they'll make time for you at least a couple of times during the term at your schedule, even if it's different from everybody else's. because you've made the effort to go and like talk to them. That's really the big thing. Just go and talk to people, right? Just make the step and say this is what would work for me, and most academics will find a way to work with you. Now, related question that I saw in the chat before Matt offers his perspective. There was somebody who asked about the efficacy of online lectures, and the truth is that that is a personal question. For some students, you really need the structure of being at a physical program where you can sit and see the professor in the flesh, and you're forced to go to a specific thing on a regular basis in order to get your degree. That is a model that works for a lot of students, has for hundreds of years, because they need that kind of structure. For an online program, there's a lot of structure, but it's a more flexible structure, and that's going to work for different types of students. Learning modalities can change depending on your perspectives, your life experiences, etc. So I would consider whether or not an online program is right for you. If you feel that you need to be told to be at a specific location at a specific time every week, if not, you're not going to be able to follow through, then maybe an online program isn't for you. But if you value the structure with the added flexibility of being able to interact around your existing schedule, then online is probably a little bit better. The question of efficacy is going to be a personal one, and there's really no other way to frame that.
Thanks, JC. I think it's really important for people to kind of take those considerations. I know that from firsthand experience with a lot of the students that we've helped, join onto the course. No other university program would have been an option. It's the combination of the fact that we've got it fully online with flexible learning, built around these applied learning principles that just resonates so well with many of our students, that isn't typically available elsewhere. And I can kind of link this into a question that I've seen come through about accreditation, programs that are triple accredited as well. This often comes up, and I'm going to be very frank and transparent about this. If you believe that you need a triple accredited MBA program and university, you probably need to go in that direction. There are, in all honesty, only a few environments in which that type of qualification is required. And what you're getting through here is a full master's degree. It's a level 7 qualification. It's worth 180 credits. Beyond this, you can look at PhD or doctorate programs in terms of the gateway through here. Triple accredited programs cost a lot more money. And if that's what you need, please do go. And for anybody, do your research, see what's required for your field. Is this the right fit? It's why each university has an MBA, many different MBAs a lot of the time as well. That's available, because it isn't a sort of one size fits all program. But we're really confident that what we've produced through this online MBA is something that's really accessible, really practical, and you can utilize from day one. And if what Matt has been talking about in terms of how he's used this and how it's expanded his knowledge, if that's resonating with you, then it's likely that this can be the right kind of direction. But again, I've kind of mentioned about the enrollment team and your advisors. Have that conversation. We're here as consultants, and we want to make sure that you're making the right decision, joining the right university, joining at the right time, because we also want to make sure that we can be successful. We want you to be successful, and we'll give you the support required to get through. We're really proud of our high graduation rates on this course. The majority of our students will pass with a distinction, like Matt. And that's because we don't just advertise and force everybody that he's interested to join the course. You find the right people in the first place, and you offer them the support that's required to do well in a program like this. And that's our main focus. And to talk a little bit more, Steve has been so patient until I've passed something over to him. But I know as we talk about accreditation and recognition, it's really important within the US and North America about how the University of East London is recognized as an institution. So I'd love it if you can kind of expand on that for us today, Steve.
Yeah, we've made things like accreditation very confusing here in the US, and the fact that we have about 13 to 16 different kinds of accreditation. It's gotten a little ridiculous. Uh, Regional accreditation is the highest, most recognized, what most reputable, recognizable schools have, state schools, Ivy League schools, things like that. They're referred to as regionally accredited because there's 6 accrediting bodies that's broken up into those regions, and they accredit those schools in those regions. That is the accreditation I would say is comparable to what the University of East London holds. Accredited as a public British university under the World Charter. It's what Oxford and Cambridge hold. As well, though, they're a Title IV recognized institution by the U.S. Department of Education. So we see that accreditation, the recognition, those things are there for the university. Where the main difference really comes into play is the fact that you do not need a bachelor's degree for this program. We can go solely off of the work experience, which is from the 2,500 colleges we have here in the US, almost every single one of them will treat the traditional student as an 18-year-old out of high school, no matter your actual age. You have to get a bachelor's degree before you get a master's degree in almost every circumstance. It's just not the way of the world. It's not the way in the UK, where I think they can focus a little bit more on what's best for the students. And looking at someone like Matt, like pretty much everybody on here, the vast experience that you guys have exceeds anything you would gain from an undergraduate degree. You are just going to take classes you can teach at that level. And that's a lot of time, money, and effort to put forth towards that. A lot of people are asking about scholarships and financial aid and stuff like that. Well, imagine adding $60,000 to $120,000 bachelor degree that you got to get first onto that. Oh, you get Pell Grant. That's very nice, but you have to pay, you get 5,800, whatever it is, dollars a year, but you have to pay $25,000 a year on top of that for 4 years to gain your bachelor degree. And that's just so much to do for people to move backwards in terms of their education. This is an opportunity for them to move forward, to find things like, as Matt said, that are useful to themselves and where they're at in their careers, and take themselves forward. That you can use those real world examples that, to be honest, people who just got out of their bachelor degree, they're not going to have that experience. They are the ones that are provided with case studies because they don't have any experience. They don't have anything to draw from. Our students have the experience because we require it, so they can draw from that real world experience, pull it into the degree and their assignments, and connect those things, find the relevancy to what they're doing here. And like Matt, I think a lot of our students really enjoy that and find the worthwhile to it, that I'm not just checking a box and coming out with my MBA. I feel like I learned something. I was educated within the field of business, that I can use these tools, these resources, and what I learned in my future career. So everything goes along with that. The accreditation, recognition, those things are there. With where our students are at, they find this a very useful, relevant program to help them in their careers. You're on mute, Chris.
Apologies there, I was on mute. It was going to happen at some point. Thanks, Steve. You mentioned the point about, some of these questions about scholarships that are available. Look, we've got lots of different funding routes through full-time, part-time. There are loan options that are available. You talked about this being a Title IV registered institution through the Department of Education. So it makes things like Sallie Mae loans available in the US. There's a whole scheme in the UK. If you live in England, or under 60 years old and studying your first master's degree, you can take out a student loan. It's not means tested in any other way. It doesn't matter what your household income is. You can get a loan that can cover the full tuition for your fees, and then repayments will begin after you've graduated from the course. There are accessible ways to accessing this program, whether that's through a loan or taking out a payment plan directly with the university, which, if you're studying, part-time over 2 years, a monthly payment plan is going to be a little over £500 per month. You leave the course debt-free. So we know that the average cost of MBAs in the UK is about £30,000. So we're already considerably under that. Steve, I don't even want to talk about how much it costs in the US. It's a lot more. This is an affordable option, but we still appreciate, of course, that this is an investment and it needs to be a worthwhile investment. We want to know that what you're getting is a return on that investment that you're putting in. And I've got a great stat for those that are watching. Almost half of our students, it's 44%, will get a pay rise or a promotion before they finish a Ducere program. And we're so pleased with that. It's the type of outcome that we want to see. And it's probably further improved when you consider that a lot of people that join this course are self-employed or running their own businesses. I'm sure they'd love to give themselves a pay rise or a promotion, but it's not possible. Some of them are coming in with that motivation to, apply this directly to the business that they're in charge of. But if those motivations are there, don't wait until you graduate. You can get started from the moment you enroll into the course. Update your LinkedIn profile, put the university logo on there, change your CV so that you've got MBA listed. If you're making applications for jobs, select master's degree in the drop down. Many of the application portals that exist out there these days are going to filter you out if you don't have a degree. You could literally be on paper through professional experience the ideal candidate for that business. But you know what? They're never going to know that because they're not going to see your application. If you haven't got a degree, you won't make it past that filter. You can start making that change from September. You can change what you're selecting within there, that you're on a master's degree. That's your highest level of qualification. And you can start seeing the changes that makes of when you're, seeing more roles that you're being shortlisted for. So if that's the motivation going in, we really want to support you and make sure that we can see a return on that investment before you've even finished, because the jump up in salary that you might be able to get is going to be more than tuition for this course. So you'll make it back in year one. We love to obviously hear from our students of both those active within the course and then beyond their time of graduation, as how this has helped them. We have students like Matt who will join us on these sessions to talk about how it's positively impacted them. And we'd love it that maybe someone that's joining today is going to be a future panelist, sharing their experiences of the program and how it's helped them as well. Now we've had a couple of questions come in. Oh, sorry,
well,
Steve.
For Krista's on the scholarship of it for U.S. students, there's nothing specific towards those regional aspects of it. All of our students are eligible for a student ambassador program. It is a very nice scholarship that provides a significant tuition reduction. And we just ask that you do things like Matt is doing for us here, that you be involved in a webinar to gain your student perspective, referrals, testimonials, those sort of things. So that scholarship is available to all students. And it's pretty significant. There's pretty much one other scholarship directly through the program, but it's more of a hardship aspect of it. So first, I would say speak to your enrollment advisor so you can determine your eligibility. Those are really the only things directly through the program outside of the funding and the lenders that we have sourcing, but something I would say definitely discuss with your student support advisor. And I did see your other question as well about the executive MBA and taking AI courses. So as Chris had said, the programs, it's only a difference of 2 courses. Okay, so you would not be doing a full program. You're not going to retake the courses you've already taken. So I would always look at it, is finance for managers and marketing communications a good fit for yourself, or is it the 2 AI courses a better fit than going into that? Now, if you realize or think that the first part is and the executive MBA is a good route for you, of course, yes, you can take the AI courses in certification program and just take those 2 courses. So you can get your MBA and then you can get a certification, the AI, and taking those 2 courses. Now, of course, it's going to increase the tuition in what you're doing because you're paying for 2 and taking 2 more courses, but that's definitely an option and something else I would say to discuss with your enrollment advisor.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we are seeing a lot of interest within the AI modules. That's because it's an incredibly hot topic. But for a lot of people that are out there, so is finance and so is marketing and communications. I know that a lot of students that come into the course, Matt, you talked about kind of gaps in your knowledge. The type of individuals that may come into this program, they've got to pretend they know everything every day at work, but leave your ego at the door when you enter this program. If people didn't have gaps in their knowledge, there wouldn't be a need to have programs like this. And I think for many people, if they've not been involved in finance directly, that is an area of focus, and sometimes it can be, imposter syndrome. People think actually, maybe I'm not ready for this. It's going to be beyond my capabilities. I mean, Matt, what kind of areas as you came into the course, were there any specific modules that you kind of felt like this is where it's going to be a little bit more tricky for me?
Um, I suppose digital transformation for me, probably, because I had no idea what that even meant. I was just completely like, that was totally alien. But I suppose more interestingly was what I learned on the courses where I really thought I knew everything. So if you'd have asked me which one I would have found the easiest, I probably would have told you financial, because I was like, well, I've had 10 years of restructuring at CEO level and turnaround and, pitching three rebanks with an IF facility in excess of 2.5 million. I've dealt with the GRG restructuring division of RBS and all of that stuff. So I thought, I have got this. I knew nothing. It's completely different. Once you get into the detail of it, you realize actually when you're trying to be a CEO or you're at senior level management, you have to know a little bit about everything, right? And you have to move at such speed that you don't get a chance to learn the fundamentals. And what this course does for you is give you all of the building blocks. So it's that solid foundation of knowledge that you've got. And if you want to talk about ROI, when I lost the business, it probably cost me in real terms, probably something between 3 and 4 million quid is the real number. If I'd have met me 10 years ago, I wouldn't have lost the business. And I wouldn't be on this call now because I'd be on a yacht in Monaco somewhere because I'd have been making baller money. But there's absolutely nothing you will learn on this course that's theoretical. This is not knowing the difference between ionic and covalent bonding or anything, right? This is everything that you actually learn is real and is applicable to what you do day in, day out in work. And you will learn a level of strategic thinking that will serve you in everything you do in life. And I think there's so much thrown around about strategy and about finance and all these things we think we know. And then actually you get into the MBA program and you realize that you've probably skipped a huge piece of knowledge, and having that fundamental to draw down on is really good. You will know every touch point of a business. And so when it comes to recruiting, if you're recruiting a marketing director or a finance director or any directorial role, you will have the information to get that decision right. And if you think of the hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars that you lose by getting those decisions wrong, by understanding what the models are, by understanding the language and knowing how it should be deployed, you'll know exactly what great looks like. I want to just say one quick thing operationally. So it's in terms of if you're one of those people where you want to skip the live lectures, okay, I think that's a missed opportunity, but sometimes, time constraints do that. Stick to the academic you've got. So you will have if you're in a group with a couple of different people, you might find that they have different academics, and there's a temptation to watch a different academic's video and follow their advice. Don't do that. Stick to the one academic you've got, because when it comes to the marking of the assignment, when it comes to the detail, every academic will want things done in a very slightly different way. And my advice is always, one of you, if no one else has asked it, once you get to the end of the first lecture and you start to talk about the assignment, ask your academic what's most important to them and what their drivers are, because all humans are slightly different. All humans look for something slightly different, and that's a really good piece of operational advice, if you like.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Matt. It is important. we know that the focus needs to be within those that you're dealing with. You know, kind of Juan Carlos made that point earlier. Just make sure you're asking the right questions to the right people. And if you even if there is that shared knowledge between your kind of study groups and people that you have, just make sure that your academic is in the loop as well, so that you're going to be answering those questions in the right way. We've got a couple of questions left to answer. Both of these are actually linked through to the application process. I should point out that that's asked about how to apply, what the next steps are, we've taken a note of your name. We're going to make sure you've got an enrollment advisor reaching out to you to go directly to answer those questions. But I will sort of just cover very briefly what is required for the application process. We've got a deadline coming up, which is the 22nd of August. That's for all of our self-funding students. For this, you are going to need to send us a personal statement. It's around about 500 words. It covers off your background and motivations for studying on the course. You need to send us your CV or resume. Send us a scan of your passport or other ID, and you can speak to your enrollment advisor if you need any advice over which forms are accepted. And then you're going to need 2 professional references as well. Now, these are letters of recommendation. It should ideally be from somebody who has been a manager or a director within the business. If you run your own company, then it could be a business partner, it could be clients, but they're individuals that can provide you with a recommendation for you doing the course that's going to back up the other documents that you're submitting for the program. And that's it. There's no interview. You don't need to pay an application fee. There's no hidden charges within that. So if you're interested today in joining us as a self-funding student for that September intake, please do get your application in that time. It would be wonderful to have you join us.
And just to clarify in semantics for Chris, not send us, you will post those into your application
Yes, you will.
directly. So you don't need to email it directly to your EA. When you go to the application, you fill in minimal fields, post those things directly in there. Remember, if you don't have a bachelor degree, we don't need any transcripts from you. So you can leave that portion blank, leave that educational history blank. We're going based upon your work experience. And all that stuff comes directly to your EA or your enrollment advisor, and they will process that probably within 24 to 48 business hours.
Thanks very much, Steve. It looks like we've got all of those questions answered now. I hope I've not left anything off from there. So I'll take this opportunity to thank all of my guests today. Matt, Juan Carlos, Steve, thanks for joining us. I think it's been a really informative session. And for those that have been watching, we really do hope that we can see your application come in before the deadline and join us in September. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye.